I used to blow my six-figure salary on clothes and shopping, all while being stuck in over $120,000 of student debt that I had no idea of how I was going to pay off. And honestly, this was because of a ton of mistakes and bad money habits that I had that could have easily been fixed. So in today's video, I'm breaking down all the biggest shopping mistakes that were keeping me stuck. I'll tell you about the habits that cost me, how to avoid them yourself, and how to build a wardrobe that actually feels like you without overspending or having to rely on shopping for a quick dopamine fix. Starting with the first one, chronically chasing trends. I don't actually think there's anything wrong with wanting to be on trend or a little bit current and modern with your style, but if you let yourself get caught up in every single trend as it comes out, I'm gonna tell you that this is a losing game. Trends are basically designed to make us feel behind, and they come at us so quickly at such a rapid pace that it's impossible to keep up with them. And it's something that I let myself get caught up in for years because I wanted people to perceive me in a certain way based on what I was wearing. And being on trend was a way that I thought I could do that. But the problem with that is when you chase trends all the time, first of all, it's a never-ending game. As soon as you buy one trend, it's gonna be out of style in a couple of weeks, and you're just constantly searching and adding for newness. The other thing about trends that I find interesting is that when they come out, they're all full price. So it's actually quite expensive in many ways, especially if you're not savvy or thrifty. And I wasn't at the time in my Shopaholic days. I felt like I had to buy everything brand new. Then it becomes quite expensive to keep up with. So instead of letting every single trend that comes along dictate what you wear and what your style should be and how you spend your money, I think it's better to pick and choose what trends actually resonate with your style so that when you buy into them, they don't end up wearing you, and they also integrate seamlessly into your wardrobe for years to come. This next one I think is going to resonate with so many of us because I feel like we tell ourselves a lot of stories before we're going to buy something and to convince ourselves to buy something. And that is shopping for your fantasy self. If you've never heard of the fantasy self, it's essentially shopping for the person that you wish you were rather than shopping for the person you actually are.
Who am I? I don't know.
And when you shop with the fantasy self in mind, the tendency is that you end up buying things that don't really fit into your everyday life. So those things, most of the time, don't really end up getting worn. And the problem with that is not only do you end up with a closet full of clothes that you don't wear, but you end up wasting a ton of money. And I want to say that there is a little bit of nuance when it comes to the fantasy self because I think it is important to picture a version of yourself that you want to become. I feel like you can kind of use the fantasy self as almost a North Star that you want to work towards, but it does mean that you actually have to use and wear the things you buy in the name of the fantasy self. And that was the huge disconnect for me. I'd end up buying a ton of statement pieces that I never wore or a bunch of high heels that I couldn't even walk in. So I just ended up wasting my money and even feeling worse about myself later because I could never become the version of the fantasy that I wanted. But when I wanted to buy something, I would often use that fantasy self to convince myself to get it. And the thing about the fantasy self is like, it's exciting, it's alluring. You really can almost see the potential in the piece and who you can actually become when you buy it. So it's like really exciting when you spend that money and when you buy that thing. But it's that disappointment and remorse and regret that comes later that really ends up costing you. So I think tread lightly and be smart when it comes to shopping for your fantasy self. You really need to make sure that you're taking the steps to become that version of yourself when you're shopping with the fantasy self in mind. Otherwise, you're just dreaming. This next mistake I think a lot of us tend to make, especially if you feel like you have a problem with over shopping and overspending, and that is buying for stuff, not for style. And I'll give you an example of what I mean with this. Think about when the concept of the capsule wardrobe really blew up on social media. I'm talking maybe like 2020, 2021. Everyone is out here talking about a capsule wardrobe and how great it is. And you know what? I stand by that. Capsule wardrobes can be very helpful if you find the version of one that works for you and your life. That is the big caveat, but that's also where the mistake comes in, where so many of us thought that we could just buy every single item off our checklist. You buy the white t-shirt, the white button down, the black boots, the black dress, and you're good to go. But I used to do that all the time. I would get obsessed with like a certain aesthetic, for example, like the Parisian girl, the effortless cool girl, and notice that, you know, she's wearing this t-shirt and this pair of jeans and this trench coat, and I just need those and I'll be effortless. But I never made the connection between how the pieces align with that person's personality, with their lifestyle, and even with things like their proportions and how they actually carry the clothes that they wear. All of that at the end of the day really matters. You need to feel good in your clothes, and they need to align with not only your personal style, but your lifestyle. So those checklists, even though they're very handy and they can be a very good starting off point, they need to be taken with a grain of salt and a little bit more nuance so that they fit well into your life and it becomes money well spent and clothing that is well used and well loved. Which brings me to point number 4, and that was not understanding color, fit, and proportion for me. I've had both a body type and color analysis, and I find them actually a lot more helpful than I thought they would be. So for me with this, it's more nailing feeling harmonious and at ease in your outfit, as opposed to feeling uncomfortable and fussing with things because they feel off. And I found for me, things often felt off because the color wasn't right for me, or something about the cut and the proportion wasn't right. But I used to just kind of buy whatever I wanted, whatever was cool at the time. Remember how I said I was constantly chasing trends? Well, that also meant that I would be chasing color trends and silhouette trends. So if the cool color of the season was like a mustard yellow in a really bohemian ruffly top, I would still buy it because it was cool, it was on trend, it was something that I could try and experiment with. But I had no idea that, for example, for me, warm tones are awful, and I don't like frilly silhouettes on myself personally. So nowadays, because I understand what colors I gravitate towards, what colors I feel good in, and the shapes and silhouettes, I end up saving a lot more money, and I'm pickier because I know what works for me and what doesn't, instead of just trying to do it all. Next was one-hit wonder shopping. This happens when you buy an outfit. Maybe it's for an event or something really cool that you're doing, or a vacation, but you have no plan and no vision of how you're going to style those pieces or that outfit beyond that one event. And I think maybe beyond like a wedding dress or a bridesmaid's dress, I don't want any pieces in my wardrobe that I can only wear once. But back in the day, it was all about the mannequin dressing, or really just focusing on what you were going to wear to that one event. And God forbid if you ever wore the same thing to an event twice. These days when I shop, even if it's for a statement piece, I want to be able to wear it in multiple different ways. I feel like, what's the point of buying something if you can't wear it more than once? Like, I really don't get it anymore. I don't mind shopping at all. In fact, I still do. I still really enjoy buying clothes, but you have to be your own gatekeeper a little bit. And one of my criteria is that I need to be able to style something in at least 5 different ways before I let it in. And it has to be outfits that I would actually wear. I don't want any of us to have anything sitting idle in our wardrobes, so I think it's important to be able to learn how to style your clothes, wear them in multiple different ways, and really get your money's worth. Otherwise, it can just feel like a waste. Do you ever find yourself just kind of staring blankly at your wardrobe when you're getting dressed in the morning, where you're just like, okay, I've got a closet full of clothes, but nothing to wear? I had that feeling too for years, and it was because I was focusing on shopping for quantity over quality. A lot of the satisfaction that we get from shopping is not necessarily buying the thing itself, but it's that feeling of accomplishment and almost like a hunter-gatherer kind of way, like I scored the stuff, or like look how much stuff I got for this little amount of money. And that can be a driver for why a lot of us shop. So for years, I wasn't necessarily buying clothes to help me get dressed in the morning. I was just buying things to get a dopamine hit and to see how many things I could buy for as little money as possible. But the problem with that was not only was I wasting a ton of money, but a lot of these clothes were really cheap And my closet was overflowing. They didn't help my style whatsoever because I didn't even know what I owned, and every time I opened up my closet, I felt completely overwhelmed and I didn't know what to do with anything. And when you do that, you kind of just end up with an empty wallet, an overstuffed wardrobe, and a feeling like you have nothing to wear. And believe me, it took a lot of work for me to shift my mindset to focusing on quality rather than quantity, because I wasn't used to spending X amount of dollars to only end up with 1 or 2 pieces rather than 10 or 20. So when you start focusing on fewer, better pieces that you love to wear, then it truly does start to become easier to get dressed. This next mistake I fell victim to after I committed to overcoming my shopping habit and paying off my debt. And that was actually decluttering too fast. When I kicked off my own journey, I got super hardcore into minimalism and wanted to get rid of everything. I just thought everything was junk and I couldn't take it. So I just started getting rid of stuff to the point where I got what I call declutter drunk, and you get just as much of a high from decluttering as you used to with shopping. But I learned pretty quick that the problem with doing anything in an impulsive kind of way is that it can lead to consequences down the road that you really didn't think about. So I found a few instances where I would declutter things and then realize that I needed them later on down the line, or that I wish I didn't get rid of it, and I ended up needing to buy some things back. So I ended up wasting double the money. I'm still a big fan of decluttering, but nowadays I think it's more important to do it slowly and to really be confident in your decision. I think a lot of the things I decluttered in the past was really impulsive and reactionary. I almost used it to punish myself for previous bad behavior and bad overspending, but that mindset really just didn't end up serving me and ended up being a waste of money. Here's one I think we've all done before, and don't tell me that you haven't because I know you have, and that is buying something just because it's on sale. Because a lot of times when we shop and when we buy things, it's not even about the stuff. It's about the fact that you got that deal. That's truly what ends up feeling like the win, as opposed to buying the thing itself. And I can't tell you how much money I wasted in my lifetime spending my own money thinking that I was saving it. And that definitely doesn't mean that you shouldn't buy things when they're on sale. I want you to save money, but I think it's important to know when you want the actual thing versus when you just want the deal. Have you ever said that you were on the hunt for something? You know, like on the hunt for the perfect trench coat, the perfect black boot, the perfect button up. I have been on the hunt for things for years, and the biggest mistake that I made is that, you know what, the hunt never ends. And this was hard for me because when I loved using the idea of hunting for the perfect thing as an excuse to keep on shopping, but it also meant that for me, I had to learn to be satisfied and really figure out what enough or good enough was for me. Like, is this piece functional in my wardrobe? Do I love to wear it? Am I actually wearing it? All of these are going to be indicators to kind of affirm that you made the right purchase for your own wardrobe, rather than always looking outwards at what's new and what's potentially better. Because if you keep looking for that perfect thing, which by the way just doesn't exist, then you're just going to keep wasting your money and filling up your wardrobe trying to find it. And this is probably one of the biggest shopping mistakes that I made back in the day, and that was using shopping as an emotional crutch. You know, rather than using shopping as something that you can do as a fun pastime, something that you can do with a friend or family, like shopping can be a wholesome and really kind of joyful experience, but I was using it to self-soothe. I'd shop when I was bored, anxious, sad, and I would do it to try to make myself feel better. And it would, temporarily, which is, you know, why we keep doing it. But the long-term consequences of that were obviously not worth it. Because I was basically draining my wallet in an attempt to escape my own reality and facing any of my feelings that were bothering me. Even though I thought shopping was making me feel better, nothing about the way I was using it was positive or healthy, which was a big mistake that was keeping me broke. So nowadays, I really try hard to just check in with myself. It takes a couple of seconds, if that, to just ask yourself, hey, am I bored right now? Am I stressed? Why am I doing this right now? What do I think that this is going to buy me? What am I really trying to buy here? And I learned the hard way that when you try to use shopping to escape from something, you're just going to stay trapped in that cycle. And I even made it so that when I'm budgeting my money and tracking my spending, I have a little mood tracker in my Google Sheet that I can just check off how I was feeling or how I felt about that spending, just to get a sense of my emotional state and kind of see if I can identify any patterns that's associated with a certain kind of spending. It's eye-opening and it doesn't take a lot of time. So if you want to check it out for yourself, I will leave it linked in the description. So those are some of the biggest shopping mistakes that were keeping me stuck and how I overcame them. Let me know in the comments below some of the mistakes that you made and how you fixed them. Honestly, the comment section is probably the best place that we can learn from each other. And if you want to know even more habits that will really help you stop overspending for good, you can check out this video next. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next week. Bye.